Have you ever just glanced at your bank account or remembered an upcoming bill and instantly felt that heavy knot drop right in the pit of your stomach? Yeah, if you've been there, I promise you, you are absolutely not alone. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving deep into a super universal, but honestly highly misunderstood feeling. We're going to unpack the real mystery behind modern money stress and figure out exactly why you might be feeling so incredibly anxious about money, literally regardless of your actual income or bank balance. Because as it turns out, it's not all in your head, it's baked into the system, and it's actually hardwired into our biology.
So, to get to the bottom of this mystery, here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the stressflation epidemic. Number 2, the macroeconomic squeeze. 3, the cognitive tax of scarcity. 4, modern debt traps. And number 5, rewiring our financial brains.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the stressflation epidemic. Why you feel broke regardless of your bank balance.
Right off the bat, I just want to completely validate the struggle that so many of you are feeling right now. If managing your money has felt, well, just way more exhausting lately, it's because it actually is. A staggering 83% of Americans report experiencing significant financial stress. Like, that is huge. This isn't just some minor passing worry. This is a widespread epidemic, and it's being driven by compounding inflation, rapidly rising living costs, and these persistent nagging fears of a recession. It's actually the second most common stressor in the entire country, and it carries an unbelievably heavy psychological load, especially if you're a millennial or Gen Z. In fact, researchers have actually coined a brand new term for this. They call it stressflation. It's basically this toxic convergence of intense economic pressure and mental health strain. So it's really not just a math problem anymore. It physically impacts your sleep, your daily mood, your relationships, the whole shebang. And here's the absolute cruelest paradox of stressflation. The exact same financial pressure that's causing all this severe distress, yeah, it's keeping 60% of people from seeking out mental health support, simply because they feel like they just can't afford it.
Let's move on to Section 2. The macroeconomic squeeze. The structural forces working against you. Okay, let's dive into the macro data. Because if you feel like you're running on a treadmill, just trying to stay in place, well, the numbers show the system is literally stacked against you. Take a look at this. There's been a massive 45-year divergence in our economy. Between 1979 and 2025, U.S. net productivity grew by an incredible 90.2%. That means the actual economic value that workers produce basically doubled. But typical worker pay growth, that only went up by about 33%. So for decades, the wealth you generated was totally decoupled from the wages you actually took home. Just think about that. If wages had actually kept pace with productivity, the baseline financial reality for the average household today would look totally, vastly different. And honestly, where the squeeze hurts the absolute most is housing. Back in 1990, the home price-to-income ratio was 3.1. But by 2025, that ratio jumped all the way to 4.9. This intergenerational real estate crisis has effectively locked a massive chunk of the middle class completely out of traditional wealth building. To put that into perspective, household incomes would need to immediately jump by an astronomical 58% today just to match the kind of housing affordability the buyers had back in 1990. Crazy, right?
So, because a basic starter home can now easily command $1 million valuation in some places, people are being forced into these survivalist adaptations. Get this, 52% of 18 to 29-year-olds are now living with their parents, and a whopping 71% of aspiring homeowners are just flat out delaying major life milestones. We're talking getting married, changing careers, having kids, all until they can finally afford to buy a home. And the kicker? This is not because of unemployment, which is actually historically low. It's purely a result of massive inflation on essential, everyday costs.
So, we've laid out the massive macroeconomic pressures at play here. But that brings us to a really vital question. What does this chronic economic pressure actually do to your brain on a daily basis? Let's zoom in.
That brings us to Section 3, the cognitive tax of scarcity. How money worries hijack mental bandwidths. Now, behavioral psychology has pioneered this incredible framework that explains exactly how the feeling of not having enough completely hijacks our mental bandwidth. And honestly, this is probably one of the most important takeaways of this entire explainer. When you are financially stressed, your brain focuses so intensely on just surviving the moment that it literally depletes your cognitive resources. We're talking about a temporary drop in executive function that is equivalent to losing 13 IQ points or entirely missing a full night's sleep. So I want to be super clear here. If you're feeling mentally exhausted or like you're making poor financial choices lately, it is absolutely not a lack of intelligence. It's a literal depletion of your cognitive bandwidth caused by ongoing financial precarity.
And that exact cognitive depletion forces your mind into a state called tunneling,
When you're tunneling, you become hyper-focused on whatever immediate financial fire is burning right in front of you, like figuring out how to pay this week's utility bill. But doing that creates what we call present bias. You become practically blind to long-term planning. You're forced to make decisions that prioritize immediate survival over future stability simply because your brain literally does not have the extra bandwidth to look outside that tunnel. Now you might be wondering, what if you actually do have money, but you still feel all this stress? Well, there's a name for that too. It's called money dysmorphia. It's a distorted perception of your finances that just doesn't match reality. So you might have really solid savings, but you chronically feel broke anyway. This actually affects 43% of Gen Z and 41% of millennials, and it is heavily fueled by all that constant exposure to highly curated wealth and totally unrealistic lifestyles we see every day on social media.
A lot of this also ties right back to our unconscious childhood blueprints, which financial psychologist Brad Klontz calls money scripts. There are 4 main types here. First, money avoidance, which is believing money is inherently bad. Then, money worship, believing money will magically solve everything. Money status, where you essentially equate your net worth with your self-worth. And finally, money vigilance, which is this extreme anxiety-inducing frugality. These scripts are just running on autopilot in the background of your mind, dictating all your adult habits. Everything from compulsive overspending to paralyzing financial anxiety.
Moving on to Section 4, Modern Debt Traps. The friction-free systems exploiting our stress.
So, modern microeconomics absolutely exploits that depleted cognitive bandwidth we just talked about, along with those unconscious money scripts. We are living in an era of totally friction-free debt traps. For Americans who actually carry a credit card balance, the average debt right now sits at $7,886. And with current interest rates frequently soaring past 20%, making just the minimum payments on that amount can literally take nearly 8 years to pay off, costing thousands in extra interest. But see, when you're stuck in that cognitive tunnel, the immediate quick relief of just swiping a card totally masks the massive long-term mathematical trap you are stepping right into.
Which brings us to the really alarming reality of Buy Now, Pay Later, or BNPL. It was originally marketed as this fun, handy tool for discretionary purchases, but the data shows a completely different story today. 46% of users now rely on it just to buy groceries, and 42% use it for basic medical care. People are literally using it as an emergency safety net. And because it is so friction-free, consumers are doing what's called loan stacking, taking out multiple mini loans all at once. This hits their checking accounts with overlapping, unpredictable payments, which frequently triggers overdrafts and throws them into even deeper distress. So, we know the system is incredibly tough, and we know our brains are kind of working against us when we're stressed. So how on earth do we fight back?
All right, final section, number 5, rewiring our financial brains. Evidence-based systems to break the cycle.
Let's look at some deeply actionable systems to reclaim our financial health. When it comes to paying down all that debt, there are 2 main do-it-yourself methods. The debt avalanche focuses on paying off your highest interest rate first, which, yes, mathematically, is the optimal way to go. But remember, we are fighting a psychological battle here, not just a math one. That's where the debt snowball comes in. This method focuses on paying off the smallest balance first, completely regardless of the interest rate. By giving you that quick, early win, the snowball method actually builds the emotional momentum you desperately need to overcome that cognitive depletion and actually stick to your repayment plan.
Now, to stop adding to the debt in the first place, we can actually borrow this awesome technique from financial therapy called urge surfing. It's heavily based on cognitive behavioral therapy. Here's how it works. Step 1, identify that immediate, burning emotional impulse to buy something. Step 2, rate the intensity of that urge on a scale from 1 to 10. And step 3, just wait 15 minutes. Don't act on it, just wait. This is such a brilliant yet simple technique because it completely bypasses your present bias. It allows that intense emotional wave to crash and recede on its own, essentially saving you from making a stress-induced purchase.
And honestly, perhaps the single most powerful tool you have is setting up systemic default nudges. Since we already know our cognitive bandwidth is super limited when we're stressed, we just have to bypass our human limitations completely through automation. Set up automatic transfers from your paycheck straight into your savings or retirement accounts before you even see the money hit your checking account. By literally hiding that capital from immediate view, you completely eliminate the daily temptation to spend it, making long-term wealth building the default path of least resistance.
Which leads us perfectly to our final takeaway for today. The hard truth is you simply cannot budget your way out of deep psychological stress, and you certainly cannot positive think your way out of compounding high-interest debt.
True financial health means you have to treat both the wallet and the mind at the exact same time. So, as you reflect on all these massive macroeconomic pressures, your own cognitive bandwidth, and maybe those hidden money scripts running in the background, which one will you focus on treating today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this empowers you to take that first, structured step toward true financial well-being.